All right, good afternoon, Council and Gallery. Welcome to our Strategic Initiative Standing Committee meeting for Monday, March 18. We're going to be discussing the budget today. Today we acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We are thankful to share in the special spirit of this place, rich in the energy of Mother Earth, our ancestors, and the love of all creation. I will look to the Deputy Mayor for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved, Mayor Saunderson.
Seconder, Councillor Doherty, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position during the meeting, please let us know. Budget discussions, item 4.1, status of draft budget, tax rate implications. Marjorie.
Through you, Your Worship, I actually have done up the decision sheets again, showing exactly where we are.
Okay.
We moved all of the service enhancements not included to be included, so I'll just pass those out.
Thank you.
So through you, Your Worship, where we're sitting right at the moment is a tax levy of $32,567,583. I'll just give you the tax rates on that. And that would provide a $31.69 increase in the town portion of taxes, and it would work out to be a 1.42% increase in taxes itself.
Just for clarification, Marjorie, is that including the capital levy?
At this point in time, Your Worship, no, this does not include the 0.75 or the 2% proposed levy.
Okay, well, last meeting we deferred the item of the capital tax levy because we wanted to have some discussion. Councillor Jeffrey, you weren't here, and you had some discussion about integrating that levy with the municipal assessment growth. So why don't you take it from there?
Okay, thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So what I was looking at was the fact that we were generating significant surpluses of late through our operating account due to growth and the supplemental property taxes that were coming in, and I believe last year's that we have was $1.7 million. And then, I mean, I was very supportive of the special capital levy. I believe that we need it. But what I was wondering about was carrying forward using the previous year supplemental taxes surplus to fund the 2% special capital levy this year, which would zero out what we would have to collect from taxpayers this year, but still contribute. But I know our bylaw for surpluses does say that it goes to life cycle 100%, so I know it would require amending the bylaw going forward to say that the surplus could be divvied between topping up the special capital levy and then the balance going to life cycle. And I think it might require a special motion going back to transfer from life cycle of 2018 to the special capital tax levy for 2019. But the point is, it really feels like double dipping by having a surplus for growth in one year and then going out and knowing that we will probably have, depending on write-offs and things, we'll probably have a surplus again, and that we shouldn't be collecting twice, and somehow we need to manage that better. So that's my request through to Marjorie is if that's the correct process, and maybe her comments on that through you, Mayor.
Marjorie?
Through you, your worship. I believe that the surplus management policy that we have now was actually passed by bylaw in August of 2017, which at this point in time, in order to change the policy, we're going to have to repeal the bylaw. The policy as it stands right at the moment allows us to top up specific reserves that we have, contingency reserve, the capital and operating contingency reserve, and the working capital reserve fund. Then we would transfer 10% of the remaining surplus to outstanding loans, and 60% goes to the life cycle replacement reserve fund, 10% to the 10% non-DC growth reserve fund, and when a reserve fund reaches and maintains a target balance, the remaining surplus funds would be transferred in proportion to the remaining funds that are not at their target. And this is all determined when we do the adequacy report and provide the balances in the surplus reserves and reserve funds to council. It would be possible to do this, however, council has to we have to amend the policy and repeal that the bylaw and create a new one.
And just as I understand the bylaw, just for clarification, the policy is reviewed annually after year-end operating surplus or deficit figures have been verified. And when do you anticipate that we might be in a position to do that?
Through you, your worship, this is going to be kind of a exceptional year, so my best guess would be sometime in June at this point.
And just as another follow-up question, when we're talking about the surplus, for the purposes of this policy, we're including our municipal assessment growth as part of that surplus, is that correct?
To you, your worship, yes, it does. It all falls down into the bottom of the bottom line. However, I would just like to remind you that in certain instances, the supplementary taxes may actually go back 3 or 4 years, depending on when the property is assessed. So, for instance, these 2018 supplementals that we have, we've had people living in properties since January of 2017 and not paying anything. So part of they didn't come on until 2018. So that's part of the large increase there. For the 2018, because it takes some time for impact to get some of the properties assessed.
Yes, it's when impact gets them online. Council, questions or comments? There's been some discussion around this table in the last few years that the county council, where myself and the deputy mayor go, there's a specific policy down there, and the issue with assessment growth is it's new assessment coming online, or the impact increase in assessment as phased in over a 4-year period. So in some respects, I think from the county's perspective, and I think from Councillor Jeffrey's perspective, and I share this, it's sort of prepaid tax funds that are going to offset the costs of development, and that either goes through infrastructure or debt repayment at the county. But we here have a very large responsibility now under our asset management plan to put money away. And so the purpose of the capital levy is to let the public know that 2% or 1% or whatever, it's been 0.75 up to date, is being set aside to as our capital, our asset life cycle management, or our capital costs moving forward. In simplistic word, in my opinion, it's like a condo reserve fund. You put money aside to pay for your infrastructure costs moving forward. And Marjorie, how are we doing on our asset management plan funds?
Through your worship, I actually did a calculation on where we are right now and where we should be had we been literally following our original capital asset management plan, and I believe that not having the accurate figures for 2018 just yet, we're about $6.3 million behind where we should be.
And from my understanding, that's not unique, because the asset management plan is a fairly new budget item, and when they came in, most municipalities were starting from ground zero. So then, I think the issue that Kathy Jeffrey is identifying, and we've discussed at the county for a number of years, is that we want to make sure that we're putting away the appropriate amount of money on an annual basis, but when we are looking at assessment growth, those are tax dollars which, in my opinion, don't really properly fall under the heading of surplus. These aren't funds that we've been able to find efficiencies or a program that we didn't initiate. These are tax dollars that should be put away and protected for future, the costs of growth. So infrastructure or paying down debt. So the idea that Councillor Jeffrey is suggesting, in my opinion, has merit to take your 2% levy or whatever we fix the levy at, and it's proposed this year to be at 2%, and to apply to pay down from those assessment growth dollars to the extent possible up to the 2%. And my understanding this year, Marjorie, is that subject to the write-offs we had last year, we would be in a position where we could essentially pay down that 2% from the assessment growth. Is that correct?
Again, to you, Your Worship, yes, that would be correct.
So, subject then, I guess, to the will of council, there's an issue about A, whether or not we want to do that, and B, then how do we apply that, given that we have an existing policy that needs to be revisited. Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Through you to Marjorie, the 6.3 million shortfall, the amount that would have been covered in the proposal levy I have here is 1.571 million for this year. If we were to go ahead with this, does that 6.3 come down just by the number going into a different column, or no?
Through you, Your Worship, we have, with the special capital levy, we have it sits in the life cycle reserve fund, but on its own. It's, we've accumulated, I think it's roughly about $540,000 now. We're kind of leaving that there because when Councillor Jeffrey, when the council that originally created it was to be used for future. And we've maintained that amount there. So the 1.571 that we're bringing in this year, we will spend that to bring the assets that we currently own up to date. It's not a future. We're not even saving the money to anything like, for instance, the new bus terminal. We should be increasing the transfer to the bus terminal's portion of the life cycle reserve by $25,000 a year over 40 years to make sure that the funds are there to replace the HVAC and the roof and the windows and the brick in the very end. So, but we're not even making.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, council? All right. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So do I need to make a motion to recommend to council that we do this? And I mean, we've had the discussion, but we really haven't given any direction. So I'm wondering if
No, we haven't, and I guess the other issue is we probably should get some input on the procedure of how we would go forward doing this if we made the decision to do that. So I'm going to look to the clerk to tell us how we could implement that given the existing bylaw.
Certainly, through your worship to members of the committee, since this was passed by bylaw, the bylaw itself and the policy did not provide a provision within it to waive any sort of provisions. So it just provided for an annual review, and since that review wouldn't occur until June, we would have to amend that policy before council could do the contrary. So it, at this point, it would have to go back, staff would have to incorporate the recommended change within the policy. Enact the amending bylaw, and then make the change fit for the budget purposes.
How long would that take? How many meetings would that require? And we've got to come back to the SIC first with this proposal.
Certainly through your worship, generally amendments do come back in the form of a staff report that hit a standing committee first to provide any sort of, public review on it before it goes to council for final consideration is generally been the process.
Councillor Doherty, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is actually not speaking to the process to amend the bylaw, but it's just thinking further about Councillor Jeffrey's recommendation. My only concern is that we have been benefiting from surpluses for the last couple of years. We have been putting them away against debt, against various funds. And in addition, we have been saving, putting away in an asset management plan with a specific levy just for that. So I can see how we can argue that it's double dipping. I see that, but I also see it as actually reducing the amount of money that overall that we are putting away. And that does give me some cause for concern. Because until our plan, our asset management fund is where it should be, it seems to me we should be continuing to add to it from a separate levy.
Okay, I take your point, and what I might ask the treasurer is, first of all, we've been working on the assumption we've only been putting 0.75% away into the life cycle. I realize that a large part of the surplus goes that way. I guess the distinction that we're looking to achieve here is separating out these funds from the surplus, because they're not an efficiency that we've found. These are tax dollars that we're getting, and so they are to some degree separate and distinct. I guess, Marjorie, if you can help us out, over the last, say, 4 years, how many times have we really exceeded, or would we have exceeded 2% on a capital levy basis? And you emailed me a chart, so I'm working off your email. So, but I wanted to give you first opportunity.
Yeah. Through you, Your Worship. In 2016, we would have probably exceeded it by the 27,000, and in 2017, it would have been 44,000.
Right. So this past year's really been an anomaly, and in our budget, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, we have a line item of around 500,000, or the rolling average, and the assessment above that is effectively accounted for through the budgeting process.
That, through Your Worship, that would be correct. And again, just one small item, and I believe you noted it earlier, that the write-offs this year at $250,000, those are exceptionally low. We will be, we've had word from MPAC that, well, we know we have the ethanol plant that's been torn down, and that reduces our, because the way that MPAC operates is when it's a reduction, it comes off, bang, right off the top. And if it's an increase in assessment, it's phased in over 4 years. So we have the ethanol plant that's come down, and we have a very large appeal in progress out in Living Waters. We have the Goodyear plant that's filed a Section 357 tax reduction request. And there are the ongoing appeals that the ARB and MPAC have promised will get settled this year for Cineplex, Walmart, Canadian Tire, Rexall, and Loblaws. And those dollar amounts could be quite large. The request for living waters is somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000. So this year, 2019 may not look as promising as 2018 was.
And then Councillor Jeffrey, go ahead.
Thank you. So, my thought was that the assessment for 2019, we would be working off for the 2020 budget, which I'm assuming we'll be doing for December 31st. Right now, the numbers are fixed. We know what that surplus was for 2018. All we need is the process to carry it forward in hindsight at this point, and then we can assess going forward based on what next year will bring, because we will have that forecast information. I don't think that forecast information is important for now, but I think it is important for us to allocate that growth assessment to the special capital taxing levy at this point in time, because we know what it is. So if that process might not be amending the bylaw for going forward, but it might be, would council have the authority to transfer the money from the previous surplus to the special capital levy? Do they have that authority to do that? The bylaw said where it would go, but do we have the authority now to transfer that out and over?
Marjorie?
Through you, Your Worship, I believe that since the year end isn't completed, I don't truly know what my bottom line surplus is going to be. I mean, I realize it's probably going to be pretty good because we did sell those shares. Council could direct me to transfer now if they wish, and we would do that. It's would be I got to think this entry through for a minute here.
In the interim, I'll look to the clerk, because I think there's a way we can actually amend the bylaw. Okay.
Through your worship to members of the committee, in hearing the conversation here, if the committee is making a recommendation to amend the surplus management policy, you could make the recommendation during your SIC meeting now to make that recommendation to amend the surplus management policy on Monday night. You just have to make that amendment before you pass the budget bylaw. So if council today didn't require a staff report, you knew right now you wanted to make that change to allow this to occur within the surplus management policy, staff would come back, and on the agenda you would have the report from the SIC meeting today with a recommendation to move forward with making an amendment to that surplus management policy. The bylaw would follow immediately with the amendment. Council could consider that, and if that's approved, then the budget bylaw, if it's prepared with that understanding, can be considered after that amendment was made.
Good, thank you very much. Councillor Madigan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. Through you to the clerk, Ms. Leonard, please. Would you be opposed to me asking to get a staff report for further analysis on this so we can make a greater decision? This is a big decision to be making today, and I don't personally have all the information that I need.
Through you, Your Worship, no, I would not be opposed to preparing the staff report, but it would be on a go-forward basis. I would like to have the time to absorb and make sure that we fully get all of the answers that we need to have for council to make an informed decision as to whether that is the way that they want to use the growth that we do have.
Thank you.
And just to clarify that, what you're recommending then, Marjorie, is a deferral, that for the purposes of this year, that policy would not be in place, or do we have time to bring it in?
Through you, Your Worship, I would recommend a deferral for this year.
All right. Councillor Jeffrey, did you want to put a recommendation on the table? Where do you want to go from here?
Well, in terms of the go forward, I perfectly agree. We can determine that later in the year, but for this budget assessment, I guess my question was, does council have the authority to transfer from the other reserve to the special capital levy?
my understanding of the answer, and Marjorie, correct me if I'm wrong, is the answer is no, because we can't do unless it's revisited in June or July when we receive our year-end numbers. Is that right, Marjorie?
Through your worship, that is when we do believe that we should have the final surplus numbers figured out. And it's totally up to council. They can direct us to do as they wish. I would say that truly the total surplus that we have, if we're not just talking about growth, but we're talking about the bottom line surplus, it will have to wait till June.
So then just to follow up on Councillor Jeffrey's question, is there a way to implement it this year without changing the policy? Okay, I'm getting a head shake on that, so the answer is no.
Okay, so I hope that we will look at it on a go-forward basis, but what this means for me, because my colleagues voted down bringing the special capital increases in gradually, that there's no likelihood that I'm going to be able to support this budget.
We can reconsider anything from a prior SIC meeting, and I guess the issue then becomes implementing the recommended increase from 0.75 to 2%, given that we will not be able to utilize, or unless we decide to utilize the significant assessment growth from this year of 1.2 million. That's an issue for discussion around the table. So maybe this is the appropriate time then to bite the bullet on the capital levy and get that on the table, because I think it will affect our overall numbers moving forward as we go back over the service enhancements. Councillor Matty.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Is this the time that I could ask for a staff report? So when we get the information in June or July, we have enough information that we don't have to ask for it then? Well,
Yes, or you could ask for that at council. I'll look to the clerk on that. You want to request it? You can request it now, yeah? Go ahead.
I would request that we get a staff report for further analysis on some of the implications of moving it in, please, and thank you.
Anything you'd have? Councillor Berman, second that. Any timeline on that staff report, Councillor Matty?
Budget time, I don't want to press Ms. Leonard, as long as we have it before the day that we're supposed to make a decision, I would be quite gracious of that.
Our budget decision?
Well, when it comes back in June or July.
June or July, okay. Does that work? All right, council, all in favor then of the staff report? That is carried unanimously. So then, back to the task at hand, capital budget for 2019. Capital levy, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can I still, Your Worship, may I still make the motion for the committee to consider asking council to transfer that money? I thought I heard the treasurer say we could do, I heard it two ways. I heard you say no, but then I heard Marjorie say whatever council wants to do, that they would make it.
Okay, Marjorie, can we get a clarification on that?
Through you, Your Worship, if we have bottom line surplus, that would be the only way that we could make that transfer. If we have, like I at this point, I don't know where my bottom line is going to end up. It could be another high year. We actually haven't had time to even look at the third and fourth quarter variances so far this year, so I would only be speculating if I said I was going to have a $2 million surplus at this point in time.
All right, so then my motion would be that we leave the special capital tax levy at 0.75 until we have the report that Councillor Madigan has asked for. And we can move forward based on that, but in the meantime, we don't exceed the 0.75.
Seconder? Councillor Doherty? Questions, comments before I call a vote? Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Hall?
Sorry, just for clarification, a week ago Monday at the SIC meeting, it was debated between 2%, which was defeated. No, my apologies, it was Councillor Jeffrey, you had originally put out a different figure, that was defeated. And then it was Councillor Hamlin that tabled the 2%, and that was adopted, correct?
Yes.
So we're now revisiting that
Yes, we are.
with a 0.75 and just keeping my dates and numbers correct, so, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're freezing it at 0.75 until we can determine how best or whether to amend the surplus management policy to allow for this separation. Councilor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson, through you to the treasurer, but I just want to remind the original staff recommendation when the budget first came out for levy was
Through you, your worship, the initial proposed budget was 31,478,627 with a 0.75 capital levy of $17.56 for the average household, and a total of tax decrease of $44.22.
Councilor McLeod.
To further clarify, so that was before we passed the enhancements. The numbers that the treasurer just said through you, your worship?
Excuse me, your worship?
Yeah.
I actually did reprint the scenarios, I just forgot to hand.
Thanks, Marjorie.
Scenarios still match up with these? So through your worship, I'm just trying to sort through the numbers at this point. So at this point, with what has been approved by this council, we are at the big page, a tax increase of 1.42. Since we have so far, not finally, but so far approved the 25 enhancements. So that brings us to an increase of $31 for an average household, that average household being assessed at $304,000, or is that average household assessed at $314,000? Through you, your worship, to the treasurer.
Through you, your worship, that would be correct, it's at $314,000.
14. So if my house is assessed at $314,000, the budget that we have so far approved leads us to a 1.42% tax increase, which is a $30 tax increase on the year 2019. That's where we're at right this minute.
Through you, your worship, yes, that's correct.
And that does not include the 0.75% capital levy, which would come out to an additional $17 or $17.56, give or take a few cents.
Through you, your worship,
Yes.
would actually, based on these two assessed values, it actually only increases that by about, I think it was 45 cents, somewhere in there. So instead of the $31.69, it'd be closer to $32.
Does that include the capital levy?
If the capital levy was included there, because a 45-cent change on the $17 is not a whole big percentage. It
Yes, of course.
would be about 0.3 or something like that.
Okay, so please bear with me, your worship, as I try to straighten this out in my mind. So at this moment, a person whose house is assessed at $314,000 is looking at a tax increase of everyone is looking at a tax increase of 1.42%, which translates to $31 for that homeowner whose house is assessed at $314,000. This is before any conversation begins regarding the capital levy.
Through your worship, yes, that is correct.
And at 0.75% capital levy, that would be $31 plus how many dollars?
Through your worship, at this moment, it would be plus $17.56.
Thank you, okay. Trying to save up my pennies.
But just one caveat there. The capital levy from last year was $16 and change. So the only increase that you'd be looking at is approximately 45 cents. So the 31.69 would not be over and above the 17. It would be an additional 45 cents because I've just worked with the big tax dollars. So there was a capital levy last year and a capital levy this year, and I haven't included them there. So you're not going to pay 31.69 plus 17.56. You're going to pay 31.69 plus 45 cents. Over and above last year.
And that's because the capital levy was in the budget last year, so the 0.75% increase amounts to 45 cents.
Okay. You had me for so long and lost me.
Sometimes I just speak accountants.
Okay. So through you, your worship, and I'm sorry to belabor this point.
Take your time.
So when I'm looking at these scenarios that you've just provided for me, the capital levy at 0.75% is $17.56. But that capital levy is already included in all of the work that we have already done?
Marjorie?
Through you, your worship, it has, when I did your tax bill last year, okay, at the 300 and last year was as a lower
Sure.
average assessment. So when I did your tax bill last year, you saw all of the total taxes, municipal portion would have been that 2238.52 on there, okay? If you're looking at scenario number 4, the 2018-22 number, and underneath that there would have been a separate line that said special capital levy of $16, and I don't actually have it here, but $16 and change, okay? So this year when I do your tax bill, you're gonna see municipal portion of the 2270.21 plus the special capital levy of 1756, okay? So if we take those two sets of numbers together, the increase is probably going to be like $32.
Okay. Thank you, I think.
Oh.
I think so.
Feel free. We're going through this slowly, so at the end of the day, we get to the right place. Where we are right now is we're looking at, I think going back, we have the motion on the table to keep the levy at 0.75, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going around the table on that, and what we're talking about at the end of the day is the value of the increase of 0.75%, which, as I understand it, nets out at about 45 cents, because it's already in the budget. Okay? Are there any other questions or comments? And before I call the vote on keeping the capital levy at 0.75% for 2019? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. So now that we know what our capital levy is going to be, we had left that out of the mixture at the last meeting when we voted on the enhancements. So do we want to revisit any portion of the enhancements then to get us a firm idea of where we are on the overall budget? Good. All right, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. First, a question through to the treasurer. Right now, our overall increase is at scenario 4 on our sheet here. Is that correct?
Through you, your worship, yes it is.
All right. So what decisions would we have to make to reduce our budget to get to scenario 6? That's like 500,000.
I believe it would be about 630, but I can go check.
All right, so my first motion then for this list would be to remove the heritage staffing request. My initial reaction was to ask to move that into building, which is self-funding. But the treasurer advises that the heritage time spent would have to be allocated to our budget, and the building portion would stay with building. And this was a committee request, not a staff request. And I think we do have, we did spot planning an extra person hiring full-time for parental leave as opposed to just hiring someone for the parental leave. And that person will be coming back later this year. So I'm very strong that we should be removing that $94,930 for the heritage staffing request. And I would move that.
Seconder? Mr. Berman, you've seconded. Discussion. Councillor Doherty.
Actually, I'll just ask for clarification on that. My understanding that the heritage staffing request would in effect be accomplished via the proposed addition to the total staff planning complement, because the individual who is returning off mat leave, who will be added to the roster, would be devoting half of her time approximately to heritage. So it would not be full-time, but it is still a position that will be split between planning and heritage, and it was the same person. That was my understanding in regard to this line item.
Will I look to on that, Nancy, please?
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson, and it is the way our department has been working is that the person who is returning is expected to spend approximately half of her time doing heritage work and the other half of her time doing general planning work. I'm assuming that this is, and I'm sorry, is this 1.5 people, I guess, that we would be putting to heritage? I'm assuming, because if we're adding another entire body, or would we be shuffling the current person who is half heritage to full heritage and then hiring another planning person? I think it could probably work either of those ways. I don't, and this would be only my view, Mayor Saunderson, through you to Councillor Doherty, I'm not sure that the direction is that we have 1.5 heritage people. My understanding is that it's 1 heritage person, Mayor Saunderson, but whether that would be half of the existing person plus half of another person, I don't know. It would certainly, and in truth, as I'm not going to be the director, it will be up to someone other than me to figure this out.
I think for that, Nancy, and maybe what we could do is at page 19 in the opening section, the overview of your larger Cerlox binders, there is an org chart, and on the far right, under Director of Planning, the second column down, and Nancy, maybe you can help us out on this part, just dealing with the current situation, not the enhancement. The Development and Heritage Planner, and then the Planner Technician. And my understanding is that the planning staff who is on mat leave is the Development and Heritage Planner. Is that right?
Mayor Saunderson, yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then the last, in this past year, we've hired a full-time complement to that who slots in under below as a planner technician.
Correct.
So we've got, I guess this kind of goes to Councillor Doherty's question, where does this new person fit in? And it was a request, as I understand, not staff-driven, this came from the Heritage Committee. And so what we're trying to get a sense, I think what council would like to get a sense of is where does this this new enhancement fit into the hierarchy here?
Mayor Saunderson, it would be my interpretation, and at this point, certainly I have not spoken with the Heritage Committee about how this would work, but we do have an individual who's about a half-time heritage person. Whether we would shift that person to being a full-time heritage person and then have an extra half-time person that would be another development planner who would be doing that work full-time as well.
So I guess maybe then we have a new planning director coming who does have heritage experience, and possibly this is something we can defer or kick down the road to see what the need is as the year progresses. Is that the substance of your suggestion, Councillor Jeffrey?
Yes, what's the reason?
That help, Councillor Doherty?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Thanks. So then we need a seconder.
Have a second.
Oh, Councillor Berman, that's right, I'm going backwards here, my apologies. Any other comments? Yep, Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, just to clarify, because I was the one, I think, through the CAO on Thursday that spoke to this and supported this. But, given the, maybe through you to Director Farrar, given the fact that the current individual is on maternity leave, it appears that you've been the staff representative on the Heritage Committee for the past year. Would that be correct?
Through Mayor Saunderson to Deputy Mayor Hall, yes, I've been attempting, I can't tell you that it gets the attention that it probably deserves, but I do have a few other things on my plate, but yes, I have been attending Heritage Committee over the last year.
But if this employee was here, that employee would be the representative sitting at those meetings?
Through Mayor Saunderson to Deputy Mayor Hall, yes.
Okay. When I was a representative, when I was on the committee, the Heritage Committee, prior to 2010, Ron Martin was our full-time staff representative. I see that he's still listed as a heritage consultant. Ron was a fantastic resource. I can only assume that he continues to be so. In his position as a consultant, is this a volunteer capacity?
Nancy?
Yes, through Mayor Saunderson to Deputy Mayor Hall. There's no question in the past year, because I am not able to give the Heritage Committee the attention that they deserve, I have been using Ron Martin, and he is paid as a heritage consultant. Our thought is that when we do have our employee back, we will be able to ease off on that use of Ron Martin, but there's no question he has been a great help during the past year with a number of things and assisting me with trying to support the Heritage Committee.
But if I'm running a ball team and I've got a number of moving parts in my infield, we've got a new director of planning who's coming in, who's going to need, I don't know, half a year to be brought up to speed. And we've got another employee who's coming back that of course will have a number of files to be brought up. So the possibility of having an asset like Mr. Martin continue in an interim as a consultant would be a possibility.
Yes, through Mayor Saunderson, certainly our thought is that Mr. Martin will continue at least, I think there's some money in this year's budget. Hopefully we won't need him as much as we perhaps did last year, but you're absolutely correct. Getting new people up to speed and then people back into their role, there will be a function for him to perform for a while this year.
Thank you very much. The reason I'm just asking is because I was very supportive of putting this in the budget the other night, but I would be supportive at this time in taking it out, knowing that we've got these assets to utilize sort of in a moving compartment. Well, I'm really under some moving parts moving forward.
Maybe just to round off the circle, Nancy, when do you expect Candace to be back from maternity?
Mayor Saunderson, it's actually 2 weeks.
Okay, well that's helpful. All right, unless there's any questions or comments, then I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of removing then the line item for the heritage staffing request? All in favor? That's carried. Any other enhancements? Marjorie, I don't know if you're allowed, if you're able to do this on the fly, but given the recent decisions we've just made, where are we standing in our scenario or implications on the tax rate?
Through you, your worship, right now would be sitting at a $25 increase or a 1.12% tax increase.
1.12. Councillor Jeffrey, I think you were pushing towards scenario 6. You got anything else to get us over the line?
Well, nothing that really stands out as a comment. I was really disappointed that we voted on this as a bulk, and I do have some comments going forward in terms of how we can do enhancements better. Like, my one comment is when we bring employees in for a budget, we put them in at full value for the year, but knowing now that we're already at the end of March and that it takes a bit to hire a process through our human resources, that we know that staff members have some room within at least those wages for this year that they can use to offset some of the smaller items in this. So I find it frustrating that I know our system requires our senior staff to go line by line, and if it's not aligned in last year's budget, it's considered an enhancement for this year. But I just can't get my head around why for 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, we can't find a way to offset that within this large of a budget. It's so really, I mean, insignificant in the bigger number, but when you put it in enhancements, when there's potential for room to just cover it off and what's already in there, I find it really difficult. But at this point, 1.12, 1.03, you know, we're close.
Point taken. Marjorie, I'll look to you. I know we've had this conversation before. I think at this table, certainly at the county, I think the accounting principles require you to slot it in at the full amount, but I guess going to Councillor Jeffrey's comments, are there ways forward that you can make allowances for smaller amounts when you know you're not going to be hiring until mid-year?
Through you, your worship, potential is there. I would just like to make the one comment that I did make last Thursday, that in particular, we have had the one coordinator for wellness, that is a full year, and it's in there for a full year because the contract was extended at the end of the year. So this is a full year's amount, and I wouldn't, we can't knock that one down if we carry it through. In general, I like to, if I could really get the budget out by the end of December, Councillor Jeffrey, we might be able to get people hired earlier in the year. So, but yes, we can look at that.
Councillor Jeffrey.
So that just twigged something else I wanted to ask about. In terms of the PRC coordinator, is that something that can be contract or somehow offset with a volunteer committee, or is it a competitive process? Is it something that just rolls from one funding to the other? It is a risk to come and ask us, unless that's just the balance of the year, a risk to come and ask council for an enhancement for a full employment allocation, and if you didn't get it, what were you going to do and where was it going to come out of? I guess that's my question.
Director Culver.
Through your worship, if I understand Councillor Jeffrey's question correctly, so currently we've maintained the concept of what's being proposed in the 2019 budget by extending the Healthy Kids Community contract on until the end of April now. But everybody's aware that if council doesn't approve this new hire, that role will essentially discontinue and that program won't happen. So it's not a risk per se, if I'm understanding correctly, and if I'm not, I'm happy to try and answer better.
That address your question, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, well, we are treading water right now as we're at potential tax levy increase of 1.12%, which includes the 0.75% capital levying, which is the same as last year. We have a mover for that, Councillor Jeffrey, okay, seconded by Councillor Madigan. You've had good discussion, but I'll give you one last kick at it. Anyone want to say anything before we call a vote? This is the recommendation that we're going to carry forward then. Ask staff to prepare the bylaw for next Monday's meeting. Sure, let's do that. Before we pass this, why don't we defer the vote, and I will ask any member of the public who would like to comment then on the potential levy increase for 2019. Mr. Taylor, welcome.
Thank you. Mayor Saunderson, Deputy Mayor Hall, and members of council. My name is Dean Taylor, and I reside at 135 3rd Street in Collingwood in the Heritage area. I'm here today representing a group of people now known as the Tree Street Coalition, and we're concerned about the safety and impact of the planned changes in the west commercial area of our town. Contrary to recent remarks last Thursday by the Deputy Mayor, many of the group have been long-term residents of Collingwood. I'm celebrating my 50th year at Collingwood, but some of our group, namely Dr. Don Paul and several others, have more tenure than I. Thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. Before I start, I wanted to highlight that this presentation in our group is not opposed to development, and we support the ongoing growth of our town. We have no issues with a developer who we know to be a reputable local businessman, who we believe operates ethically and gives back to the community through the G&M Foundation and many other ways. We did note that the picture presented by Nancy Farrar and the town staff on Thursday last was from 1880, and which seemingly identified 3rd Street as a collector at that time. We note that some of our houses were present in that photo, but that cars had not yet been invented. We're therefore happy to have unlimited horse and carriages on 3rd Street this time. As you know,
clean up after them?
It's okay. A little levity.
Yes.
As you know, we're concerned about our neighborhood, but we're also concerned about our community. Development growth has been significant over the last 2 decades, and it would be fair to say that it's outpaced some local infrastructure. It may also be fair to say that not having completed an updated official plan places the town behind the 8 ball when making development-related decisions. That's not a criticism of this council. We believe it to be a fact. We are here today to ask for something we believe is reasonable, and which we believe is fully within your ability to grant today. We believe our request to be in the best interests of the town and affordable, especially with the Collis sale proceeds now awaiting deployment. The developments at Balmoral, Cranberry, Red Maple, Indigo, Pretty River Estates, the shipyards, Monaco, and separate plans for many more units at the shipyards by Duncap will bring significant additional pressure to the town. Expansion of developments just outside of town in the Blue Mountains include Windfall and the proposed plans by Skyline at the base of the Blue Mountains. That'll even add more traffic through the town. We would ask that members of council today put forth 2 motions for discussion and approval. The first, we ask that the town set aside funds in the 2019 budget to carry out a comprehensive community-wide neighborhood impact evaluation, which includes active participation from the community and incorporates auto, pedestrian, cycling, and lifestyle mobility elements. Not just volume of traffic, not just key intersections, not a traditional flow study. One which incorporates qualitative and quantitative aspects consistent with the recent strategic plan and incorporating meaningful input from the community. It would also incorporate recommendations from the recently completed but yet untabled cycling study. We ask that the study take into consideration current and anticipated volumes associated with commercial and residential growth and consider safety and quality of lifestyle. We are growing because people want to be part of our unique community. It needs to remain unique, and we need to manage the traffic. We ask that you set aside funds in the budget to work with us to help define the vision we collectively hold for all forms of movement and how we use our community. Moreover, we offer our involvement to assist with this undertaking. Our second request costs virtually nothing and should be easy for you to approve, as it's only temporary and doesn't hold up development. We ask that the members of council today put forth and approve a motion to establish right and left turn only restrictions for the entrance to 3rd Street from High Street when approaching from the proposed new Cambridge Street. We ask that you restrict traffic flow to turn left or right onto High Street until such time as the neighborhood impact study is completed and formal recommendations can be made resulting from that report. We ask that you restrict access to 3rd Street from High Street to local traffic only by placing appropriate signage on the entrance to 3rd Street. We believe that these temporary measures are reasonable, appropriate, and affordable, and we ask for your support to enact these provisions. We believe we need to balance the protection, safety, and culture of our neighborhoods with the positive commercial and residential development occurring in our community. We have a wonderful community, top ranked in many surveys. It's equally important that we protect the heritage, culture, and the lifestyle of that community and balance that with the needs of current development interests. Could I ask for a motion that would read, to authorize the addition of a neighborhood impact study for the Collingwood community in the 2019 budget, and until completed and recommendations received and adopted, to restrict non-local traffic from entering 3rd Street from Cambridge Street. Councillor Berman, perhaps?
Mr. Taylor, thank you for the presentation. We heard what you said, and we'll look to the clerk, I think, and I think over to some of the directors. I think at this point in time, it's difficult to put that into the budget item. Certainly, we hear your concerns, and I think we're looking at a go-forward plan. I know we've talked about traffic calming. We have our OP review coming up, and so we certainly understand all of your concerns, and I think we'll look at a way to address them. I don't know that we can do it for the purposes of the 2019 budget. So thank you for that, but I will look to staff or council for comments or questions. Yes, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I must say I do like the sound of this recommendation in regard to the study. I had previously recommended that we undertake a traffic calming study and strategy. This certainly would be an enhancement and would include that, but include a lot of other factors, and it would also incorporate the entire community. It would be at this point in time an incremental line item for the budget. However, it is related directly to growth, and I'm wondering if that being the case, if we could access our DC funds in some way to underwrite the cost of such a study this year.
Marjorie?
Through you, Your Worship, the determination would have to be made as to what benefit is to existing residents. And in this particular case, since you're talking about the entire community, the benefit to existing would by far outweigh any of the growth component of the study itself. So the chances of getting any money or much money towards the study would be probably nil.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Ready to use it. Thank you, Your Worship. I very much like the contribution in terms of a vision and looking forward and working out things, but I don't think the place for this is the budget. I think discussion at this point, I think there's $3 million in the budget for the solutions to that intersection going forward based on things that have already been worked out and agreed to. And I think the committee, I'd really love to hear from these residents from is in development and operations in terms of finding solutions for them with Councillor Doherty's suggestion in traffic calming and those other things that we can look at as a development and operations committee. So going forward, I think staff have recommended what it is we need to do in terms of our commitments and promises and being consistent with all developers. I don't think that we can treat each developer differently as we go forward based on agreements we've put in place, based on the rules we have today or that have not changed since this was originally put on. So very much would look forward to being able to use some of the tools that we have, but I think it's more appropriate through development and operations at some point.
Thank you. Councillor McLeod.
Through you, your worship, thank you, Mr. Taylor, for coming to see us today, and thank you for having an open mind about the possibilities of us all working together to find a solution that works for everybody. And I would like to ask through you, your worship, to Director MacDonald, is there, the way that I understand it, is that the $3 million that we are designating in this budget is not just to the construction of the intersection at 3rd and High, but also to the design of 3rd and High. Am I correct in that assessment?
Through your worship, that is correct. It's design, construction, there's some property as well.
And as a follow-up to that, through you, your worship, to Director MacDonald, is there a way that we, as a council, not to get into too much of the minutiae regarding the design, because we understand that that is not our role, but is there some way that we could, as it's being designed, include some of the suggestions that Mr. Taylor has made regarding left and right turns and through driving and that sort of thing?
Director McDonald.
Through your worship, certainly there are some issues that we can look at, but I would have to look at the impacts. So this first I've heard of it, so I'm not really prepared to answer whether it's something that's possible or not possible. We would have to look at the potential impacts.
And as this further follow-up through you, your worship, to Director MacDonald, is there something in the agreement that we have made with this developer regarding this intersection that would preclude us from putting in some of these innovative measures to help this neighborhood feel secure in its future?
Through your worship, they've done a number of traffic studies. There was traffic studies done in conjunction with the official plan amendment. So we would have to revisit those studies and determine what the impact. So if the through traffic isn't going through and it's going right and left, then it'll have an impact on 2nd Street or 6th Street. There are a number of potential results from that, and that would have to be investigated. If you can't go down 3rd, then traffic will want to go down another street in order to get downtown. They still want to go downtown if that's their ultimate goal.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we'll get to you, we're finishing this one. So Mr. Taylor and the members of the Tree Street Coalition, thank you for that. I think that's an excellent suggestion and great food for thought. We do have upcoming our community-based strategic plan refresh. I think that would be a great opportunity to bring this forward. One of our 5 priorities in this community is healthy, active lifestyles, and safety is a concern in all neighborhoods. And so, I think the suggestion to look at this type of a study and the impacts in our community is a very good one, and certainly one that I hope through development operations will come to the fore, and we'll look at doing that. But please, I welcome you to come out to the community-based strategic plan refresh and to raise those concerns because they are community-wide. Mr. Pretty, did you have some comments on the budget?
Yep.
Come on up then.
Okay, Matthew Pretty, resident 304, Minnesota. Let's see here. Let's talk about traffic. I have a question for Director Culver.
Wait, you know what, this is your chance to speak to us, and then if you have a question for Director Culver,
Oh,
you
council?
can contact, yep, this is just, and you're talking to us today on the budget, Matt.
Let's see here. How much money is available for these traffic calming studies in relation to the whole town? Do we have money in this budget for traffic calming studies? Question one.
Well, I think those would be great questions to put through to Director McDonald and probably Director Farrar. As you know, Councillor Doherty has asked staff to come back for a report on traffic calming stuff, so it's in the works.
Seems to be a big thing because, as this gentleman pointed out, with the large number of developments, maybe that is something we need to look at as a cumulative concept. Because I know last year I brought something up to Director McDonald regarding Moberly Street. My God, like Moberly Street, you should see the heavy trucks that go down Moberly, and that's a corner that's being turned on. Just like Third.
Matt, today,
Yeah.
we're talking on the budget. I know we had a lot of
It's
discussion
all
on this.
related.
And we're hearing from a great many
Related.
residents, so this is something we're taking seriously.
Yeah, it's all related. You know, I'm not satisfied with this process, and I think, as we know with the budget in relations to getting people paid, and the projects, I have a question. This is for Director McDonald. The engineering projects that they presented at the budget, are those all approved and ready to go? They had, I think, Mr. McDonald's coworker explained about 12 different projects. Will those go ahead this year? That were outlined in the budget during meeting 2.
You know what, I think that would be a better conversation to have offline with the director.
Really?
Right.
Brutal.
That-
All right, last question. Regarding the budget, Mr. Culver, you had mentioned something about the road being updated on Heritage Drive. Is that happening this year?
Matt,
That bumpy road?
you're giving us your questions, or your comments today. If you have questions, you can direct them directly to
Oh, you
the
want
staff.
comments?
Yes,
All right. How much time do I have left?
about a minute.
Okay. Just let me think for a second.
You certainly can email us.
I'd like to see the town remain in a team-spirited manner. I noticed council was getting a bit weird a few weeks ago regarding the inquiry, and you know, I want you guys to really keep it cool so that the staff can do their job and get stuff done, because there is a demand. You know, if the council can't sit around this table and get things done, get things approved, then we're screwed. So let's, like, I'm serious here, like let's keep on the level of the presentations and the jobs to be done. We're talking about jobs here, guys. Get these jobs done, because the demand is high, the traffic's high, like this gentleman just pointed out very nicely. We've got all these developments coming, so if we start deferring all these intensification projects, we're screwed, because we can't open up for the demand that's required to keep progressive, you know? And I think that's something to think about. So my comment is, it's not time to fool around. We've got a lot of heavy demand coming. The big vehicles on the road, Mayor Saunderson, is a big thing. And I can understand that. I think the 3rd Street people are probably like, oh my gosh, we're going to be seeing transport trucks going down the road. So what is it in their mind that they're seeing? Is it transport trucks plus extra cars? You know, so the demand is happening. So I think we need to settle that screw and just keep it level. And the demand, as we know, is coming. So we don't want to upset the developers and the real estate process with the community functioning with respect.
I appreciate that.
School
So
and
you're up to 5
business
here.
and all that stuff. So let's get on the level, guys, and you know, and maybe we need to look at more of a comprehensive plan. But you know, time's running out.
Thank you for that, Matt. So our business today is to get back on the budget. And are there any comments from the gallery then? I'm looking at you, Mr. Farrar. I'm expecting. Are you good? Would you like to make a comment? No? Okay. All right. All right then. So then, unless there's any more comments from council. Wait, we had a mover. Where did we go? No, we've got quorum, so we'll continue. So I've got Councillor Jeffrey moving the 1.12% increase. Is there a seconder? Councillor Doherty? We've gone around the table. Are there any final questions or comments? Councillor Berman?
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I just, after all the debate, can you, Marjorie, please just show me what we subtracted from what to get to the 1.1?
Certainly, just dig out my paper. Our scenario number 4, which showed the total request of $32,567,583. If you subtract the 94,930 from that, you will come up with the 1.12, $25 increase. Actually, we were looking at the wrong sheet of paper for looking at the one with the 5817 on it. It would be the one from last week that had the 3169 that Councillor McLeod was referring to earlier today.
So that one's correct. The one from last week is correct.
Yes, the one from last week is correct. I'm sorry about that, but if you do take the 94,930 from that, you will come up with the 1.12.
Councillor Jeffrey?
And just to highlight that, motion also includes freezing the 0.75, right?
All right. Seeing no more comments, then I will call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? So that is carried, and that will be the recommendation coming forward in the bylaw on Monday. Are there any public delegations? Seeing none, then I'll look for a motion to adjourn, unless there was another comment. Councillor Jeffrey, you.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question? Whenever it's appropriate, I'd like to know about the answer to defining what those enhancement requests are. If there's a way to define them, that they would be 25,000 plus, 10,000 plus, and that staff would look at the rest and for a budget process going forward. So whenever it's appropriate, I think that makes more sense and better use of our time, because I think they're very well educated and very familiar with their budgets to be able to make the rest happen.
Marjorie?
Through you, your worship, if the dollar amount is 10,000, we will not include anything less than 10,000 in the service enhancements. It'll be absorbed somewhere within our budgets.
Thank you.
What you've asked for effectively though is materiality, that anything less than a certain amount is not gonna come before council.
Through you, that would be the way I would interpret Councillor Jeffrey's request.
So I'm gonna look to the clerk. Does that require a motion to define a level like that, or maybe?
Certainly through your worship to members of council and maybe to the treasurer as well. If that's changing the policy and how we bring forward the budget, I think it should be supported by a motion.
Okay, then I guess maybe to back things up again, maybe what we should be asking for is a staff report on what would be appropriate level of materiality?
Sure.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Jeffrey, seconded by Councillor Berman. I'm gonna call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Then I will look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Jeffrey, all in favor? Thank you very much, everyone.